Good. Check, check. Sounds good.
You got it? You're good?
I'm ready.
Okay, I'm going to let you kick it off.
Okay.
There you go. You're on.
All right. Thank you, Brad. Hi, guys. I'm from Tri-Cities. I cannot believe how big this area has gotten. I was here back in the 80s helping put together the Bangor submarine base. I did 20 years on submarines and retired after that, and now I'm wood turning. So it's always intimidating to come in here and demonstrate to people who've probably been wood turning longer than I'm alive. So it's good. We're going to talk a little bit about wood and resin. How many people cast with resin and wood? Anybody turn with it? Just a few? And how many have gotten real frustrated because of the chattering and the chips and that kind of stuff? Everybody? So I'm going to kind of show you how to get rid of that and how to work through that. And I'm also going to show you some molds, some resins, some releases, things that I do that help me out. We're going to talk about speeds, tools, a little bit of everything. So I'm going to start out with just some molds that I use myself and how I set those molds up. So I do everything on the cheap. I don't buy it, I make it. Okay? And the easiest way to do it is PVC. So I initially just cut a piece of PVC pipe, 2 inches. Here's the reason. Everybody casts resin in squares. And when you start turning resin on a square and try to take it down like you do a chunk of wood, it just doesn't work. Well, it does, but you just have a lot of chips flying that you don't want. So the round works really well with me. Are you getting that down there? Am I getting? Okay, good. All right, so the other thing that I do, how many have seen Heath Knuckles pour his sphere with the resin in the middle of it? Anybody seen that? Okay, he uses a big piece of PVC pipe that he cuts the center in. It's basically so can you see that? So it's basically like a 1/2 inch. And then what he does is you put the wood on either side of this, tape it up and pour your resin in the top until it comes up the top. That way you end up with wood on either side and the resin in the middle. And that works really cool when you got some burls and that kind of stuff that are working really well for you. You want to see the stuff in the burls. Okay? I have done pizza cutters, I've done everything, and they just sell like wildfire. So the next mold that I'm going to talk about is something that my wife didn't appreciate me doing, but when I do these, I have to spray them with mold release, okay? And I'll show you the mold release in a second. But I stole her good cook, little cups, and then she made me go to the thrift store and get some. What's nice about these is they're really slick inside, okay? And so what I do is I turn my wood first so it fits real tight in here, and then I'll put a piece of paper on it, and that'll seal it off. The other thing nice about this is if I want to suspend something and not hook it to my burl, this works really well for suspending stuff in resin. Okay, and that's usually a 2-pour process. Okay, so those are kind of the molds that I use. Now, the next thing that I do is I spray the inside with mold release. And I'm going to pass this stuff around so you guys can see this stuff. But I use SOO 302 general purpose mold release. And then I have a Krylon or a spray-on mold release that I do. And if somebody wants to take these, we can pass them around. And all these do is just help you release it out of the mold much easier. Okay? So when I take my PVC pipe, I'll spray that mold release inside first. And we want to do it first for one reason, okay? In order to seal the bottom of this before I put a burl inside of it, I cover it with duct tape. Why do I use duct tape? Anybody want to venture to guess?
Chain tape works with everything.
It does, so does baling wire. The reason is because I have cut a little bit too loose of a mold or a burl in here, And if I push it down all the way on that duct tape, it sticks. It doesn't float to the top when I put my resin in there. Okay? So a lot of people will hot glue it in or do something like that, but it's just easier just to duct tape it. And I'll pass all of these around if somebody wants to grab them. Okay. So we've talked about molds. We've talked about the mold release. A lot of people have used PAM, all kinds of stuff if they want to do that. Don't be afraid to take pictures of that stuff if you want to. That's great. My wife works for Granger Industrial Supply, so if you see Granger on it, that's why. Okay. Whoop. It's great when you drop a tool, huh? Okay. So once you get done with those out of the molds, and I'll pass one around. This is one that I poured last night, and I'm going to pass it around. I have not demolded this yet, okay? But this has a fly in it that's been suspended. And when I suspend a fly, I'll take and I have some wire, some real thin wire in here, and you can feel how pliable. I think it's even more pliable than baling wire, and we'll pass that around. But I take that and I put a piece of this wire and just put a hook on it and put it through the fly, right? The eye of the fly, and then I bring it up and put it on a popsicle stick or something like that and suspend it wherever I want it in that mold. And it's a 2-pour process. So your first pour is going to pour enough so that you get the hook into the resin. And that, once it dries, you can just pull on that wire and it'll unhook off of the fly, and it'll just be suspended there, and you can do your second pour. So I'll pass that around. Now, this is how they come out. Perfectly round, easy to work with, not a lot of chipping. Oh, yep, sorry. Okay. How's that? Yes. So if I'm doing, have you seen Keith Knuckles do the egg burl on both sides? That's a similar thing. You can put the burl in each end, seal them up, and then pour your resin in the top in between the gap. The only thing you have to be real careful is that it doesn't roll around in your pressure pot, otherwise you end up with the resin down there. So, got those?
What do you use for resin?
I'm going to get to that next. How's that?
Did you stabilize that mold first? Or do you just...
You know, some of it I do stabilize, some of it I do not. Okay? And I've got some examples here of why we would stabilize. A good majority of the time, I will stabilize with cactus juice. The problem with cactus juice, I don't know how many people in here have used it. How many have used it? Okay, so if I'm doing it wrong, tell me. But when I do a burl and it's really craggy on the top, okay, and then I put my cactus juice in my vacuum pot and pull it out, and then I wrap it with the tin foil to put it in the oven to bake it, because you got to get it up to 200 degrees, something like that. I get crystallization forming in the crevices. And you have to sit there and dig it out. Okay? Now, the only way that I found, go ahead.
I was going to say, before you wrap it in foil, take a Q-tip, you go into the hollows, you get as much of that out as you can, and then you won't get as much build up.
I've also let it sit for a day, and I don't know if that helps it or hinders it or what, but yeah, on some of them I do. Now, if it's a good solid burl, sometimes I won't, and more often than not, when I stabilize, it's so that it stays on this chuck. Because if I get something too soft, it's just going to spin right off of this chuck that I've got. Okay. So I'll pass these around. This one I started to turn, and one of the things that I want you to know about, well, let's go ahead and pass these around. So you'll be able to see in the top. Now this one here with the frost on the top of it, that one is somebody had given me a burl and they put a finish on it. And rather than messing with the burl and the finish, I attempted to pour it. And that's why you get that frosty color on the burl. Sometimes it's okay, sometimes it looks like snow, ice, whatever you want it to do. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about resins and then I'll get into these pieces. So I use a lot of Alumilite. see that? Okay. So Alumilite this is the slope. It will cure and be ready to go within 20 minutes. I mean, it cures fast, so you got a short working time with it. I will also tell you it's $160 for two. It's not cheap, okay? The other thing that happens with Alumilite, if your shop gets cold in the wintertime, the B side will thicken up real thick to where you can't even hardly get it to pour out of the jug. So what you can do is you can put it in a deep sink with warm water. I keep these in the house just because rather than in my shop, and when I need them, I pull them out. So this is the first one. They'll be up here if you guys want to take pictures, or I can pass them around. The other one that I most recently tried is called Royal Palm. Okay? Royal Palm resin has a 24 to 48 hour cure time. So it takes a lot to get into your work, whereas Alumilite, I can literally pour and turn the same day. Royal Palm, I cannot. Now, what's the advantage? The Royal Palm works better if you don't have a pressure pot, because it's got all that time to release the bubbles. It does a pretty good job. The difference with Royal Palm that I've noticed is that it tends to be real soft when you turn it. Okay? So you get a real soft turn, whereas the Alumilite turns a little bit more like wood as far as the feel goes. But this stuff gets so soft, and here's one. This is cast with Royal Palm. It's got an RP on the bottom. That's Royal Palm. Don't be afraid that if you want to feel how soft this is, pull out a pocket knife and you can carve on it, okay? Because I'm going to turn it down anyway, doesn't matter. But they're really soft as compared to Alumilite. I think there's one go around that's got Alumilite, and you probably won't be able to carve on that very heavily. So Royal Palm resin, it's a little cheaper. It's about 140 gallons for the same, or $140 for the same size. But it really depends on what you want, okay? So if I'm pouring a real thick piece, I won't use Royal Palm. It just takes too long to cure, okay? So those are the two resins that I use. I have used crystal diamonds. It's okay. It's not my favorite, let's put it that way, okay? You can order it online. I order direct from Alumilite, and they do come in different size bottles. So if you want to buy the smaller bottle, I'm not sure what the smaller bottles go for, but if you want to just, yeah, $30 to $40, something like that. Amazon has it. A lot of people have them. So now I'm going to get into, I'll pass one more thing around. No. I can pour, I'm just going to leave it there now. Just stay down. Yeah, it's probably safer on the ground. All right, so I poured this morning, or actually yesterday. I poured this yesterday. That's Alumilite. That's probably 3 ounces of Alumilite right there. I figure I'll put it on the lathe on a vacuum chuck and just turn it into a small coin bowl or something. Somebody will buy it. You'd be surprised, and we can pass that around so people can get a look at it. You'd be surprised how many people love the resin and wood look. Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about turning. The key to turning wood and resin is speed and touch. Okay, so I purposely did one, and I'll pass it around and I'll get it back because I'm going to show you how to get rid of this. But I personally did one before I came up here, and what I did was basically I slowed the speed down, and I slowed it down to about 800 RPM. And I was still using, you can use conventional tools, you can use carbide tools. Today I'm going to use carbide tools for one reason only. I just like it because it just doesn't create the heat. Okay? Everybody, you know, if you like the conventional tools, that's great. So if you look at this, you can see how many chips and that kind of stuff is in it. And people get scared because it sits there and goes, you know, and you'll see that as I move through this particular piece, it will smooth out to where you hardly hear anything, okay? And I was talking to this guy here, and he says, you know, sometimes he'll use CA glue to fill those little voids. I look at it as an opportunity for design. You know, if I got those little chips, I'll work on it real lot until I get all those chips out of there. So the tools that I'm going to use today are all carbon. I have two that are just the regular bits that you can buy from just about any place, carbon bits, one square, one round. And then I have one that's a negative rake, and I use that negative rake to finish, okay? So we'll pass this one around, and then I'll take it back and we'll get started. So are there any other questions about resin, doing the burls, anything like that? Yes. For me and the resin, against resin, it does. Now, I use my regular tools against wood all the time. I hardly ever pick up a carbide if I'm doing large, and I do large format bowls also, and I do some pretty intricate stuff. But I just found that these things are really sensitive to heat, and that's why a lot of people have a hard time and feel like they have to sand forever. And I just don't, it might just be my preference, I just don't feel as I get as much heat. I can feel the heat on the shavings as they come off, and I just don't feel as though I get enough, as much heat with the carbide. Anybody else? I do. Alumalite, when I'm using Alumalite, I use the Alumalite dyes, yeah. You don't want to use anything that's water-based. Is it? Transtint's okay. I don't think it's water-based, though, is it? No. Yeah. Anything water-based is going to kick that resin off 3 times faster. Who else? Okay. Yeah, I have a beautiful piece, which, you know, after I get done here, I'm happy to show off some of my work. I picked up a piece of Manzanita burl, and the thing was so craggy, I was afraid to put it on a lathe. And so I actually took it and found a big enough bucket, and I started pouring a red, orange, and a yellow mix in it. And as I turned it and started hollowing it out, I could see through the crags into the bowl. And it started looking like the lava flows in Hawaii, which was just very cool. So I'll use it a lot for crack fill. The other thing I'll use is I'll heat up pewter and put those in cracks. You know, I have my own that I have from Harbor Freight, which is the one that I use. Everybody probably uses it. Everybody gets scared. You know, the recommended pressure on that, I think, is 60 pounds. I always, you know, being this stupid idiot that I am, I'll crank it up to 70 and usually leave it. It's fine. I have not had it. I've had the same pot for probably 3 years and not had an issue with it. The Brinks, and everybody, so you know, the pressure pot that we use are really old pressure pots from painters. Painters use the pressure pot to do spray, and those are the pots that we're using. Can't use the ones that are, you know, the old kitchen ones for canning and that kind of stuff. It's just not the right pressure pot. But I've had little problem at all with the Harbor Freight.
When you put it under pressure, how long do you leave it under?
For the Royal Palm, I'll crank it up for 70. I have a valve that stops it. I'll unhook my compressor and I'll leave it there overnight. Sometimes I'll do the same thing for Alumalite. Even though Alumalite cures in 20 minutes, you can sit in the pressure pot. It's not going to hurt anything.
I've got mine set up with vacuum on one side, full vacuum on it.
Mm-hmm.
Bring the vacuum off,
Yeah, I find that interesting because I have yet to use the vacuum process. I always do pressure. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Is that? You can, or you can just turn it out. A lot of times people will just use CA glue, same thing, depending on how big the void is, I guess. But yes, you can reapply resin. You know, the resin is so versatile. I'll tell you what happened. My father-in-law, his barbecue fell over and it had a plastic handle on it, and it broke. He says, "Can you glue this up?" And I said, "Well, sure, I can glue it back together." It's in like 3 or 4 pieces. So I put 5-minute epoxy on it, glued it up, and I said, "That looks like crap." And so I took some Alumilite, mixed some black tint with it, so it was real glossy, painted it on with a brush, and just left it on my bench, and it just turned out like it was brand spanking new. Filled all the cracks, filled everything. So it was great. Use it for anything. There's a lot of people use them for finishing bowls. You can use it for sinks. You can use it for, it becomes food safe. It's just like any other resin. A lot of people want to use the marine resins. I will tell you that they turn yellow in time. Okay, now if you're using them for just a coating, that's probably fine, but same stuff they use on boats, that kind of stuff. So is that craggy one close by? Yeah. All right, so when I mount these up here, everybody noticed there was the hole in the bottom, and I don't remember what size hole that is. I apologize. But the chuck that I have here is a Ruth Niles chuck, and it basically taps and holds and screws, and it also works similar to a pen mandrel, because the size of this collar on here is the same size as the bottle stoppers. So you can turn down that way, okay? So essentially all you have to do is just screw this thing on, and of course I've already screwed it on once, but it works just like a tap. And when you screw these on, you want to go all the way to the bottom so that it bottoms out on this tap. So you can see it bottomed out. Now the other thing that I do, as you can see, is I put all thread on here just to hold it in, because I've had them fly out the end. Okay, I'm going to need this tool that I dropped on the floor. Oop. When do you get the new lathe? Sorry, I couldn't resist. All right, so I'm gonna put the tailstock up. I'm gonna put everything up where I need it. With carbide tools, it's no different than any other tool that you use. You still set the tool rest up so that the cutting edge is at center or just below center. Okay, so it's no different. Let's see if I got this close. I do not. That's pretty close. All right, let's get this tightened down. We're in. Do I have a lock on? This switch on the side? That one? Nope. Oh, there you go. It's not like my Powermatic. All right, so that switch down is... Yeah, it's rotating. Nope, nothing's on. I must have... All right, I got it now.
You got it now?
Yeah, it's going. See if we get some...
Yeah, this thing is just...
Really?
Ensure correct speed selected. Okay, on. There we go.
There we
Now
go.
your speed is right here.
500 RPM. All right, let's leave it there for right now.
All right.
So, I just want to demonstrate a little bit of what this thing sounds like when you're getting these chips, okay? So, when you come in here, you hear those, it's now smoothing out pretty nice on that one. Anytime you get that real heavy sound, you're throwing chips. When you're doing resin, it should really be nice and quiet. Hear that? How that's just chattering? That's just not doing nothing more than chipping it up more. All right, so now that you know that, and you know how to get rid of that, what I do is I take my square carbide and I start working this down real quick to the size I want the bottle stopper to be. Now naturally there's going to be some chips, okay, and I'm aware of that chips that are going to happen, and so I'm going to watch where I go. But pretty soon when I get this and I crank this speed up, you're going to see ribbons coming up from this resin. It's kind of fun to watch. So, all right, so I was at 500. I'm going to go probably, yeah, not quite that high. Come on, boy. It gets up to speed like my old Rambler used to. Yeah, no kidding. All right, now we're up here a little bit. So I'm going to leave the back alone where the wood is because I want as much wood there as possible as I'm turning this thing, okay? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to just kind of start working this. And you can see as I turn the speed up and I'm using a lot lighter pressure, you're not hearing the chamfer, right? So what's the key? High speed, low pressure, very light touch. It's a time-consuming thing. Okay. My finished product is going to be a fly stopper, a wine stopper with the fly in the middle, and it's going to be finished clear all the way around, so it's going to look like glass, so you can see through that resin and see that fly in there. This really started because there's a fly shop on the Lackawanna River called Reds, and they also do their own wine, and they have their own fly, and so they wanted me to cast stoppers with their flies, and so I started doing that. So I'm just going to work this down a little bit. It's a messy process. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time because I don't know how much time we have left. Wow, I'm doing good. All right, now I like to clean these things off because it kind of gets everywhere, flying around. I have not, but that's a great idea. I don't know how that would turn out. I have cast tinsel. I've cast tinsel. I've cast aluminum shavings. So now if you look at this with the camera real close, you can see how nice and smooth this finish is, right? See the difference between the chips that are up here? I'll turn this around a little bit. See, you can see that, and here's how smooth that's getting. And what that does is it eliminates all of those chips pretty much, and I will turn resin by my ear more than I will feel, because I can hear when it just really smooths out and it gets real quiet. It's actually kind of like therapy. All right, let's see if we can't get this down a little more. The ribbons are fun, but they make a mess. They get everywhere. I track plastic in the house. My wife yells at me.